They say the water blushed first at the edges, an innocent tint gathering like rumor along the reef. Before the lagoon went the color of rusted memory. On that evening, when the sun fell low and the gulls grew quiet, the whales sang a chorus. Nobody on this island had heard, and nobody has recorded again. We arrive years later, trailing coil cables and questions. Our boats wake slicing a mirror that won't show us back. Instruments light like constellations in our palms. In the headphones, a low earth drum that might be engine noise or the planet's pulse. If a song can vanish, what else slips under? Names, migrations, the last soft push of a calf at its mother's flank. The tide's breath tastes metallic. The wind carries a rumor of bleach. We anchor where the stories point, over a shelf of seagrass that once glittered with fish. Listen, someone whispers, as if listening works like prayer. The sea keeps her mouth. We offer ours, open, salt stung, hoping to be filled. The elders say a bloom rode in on a week of breathless heat, a fever that made the water thick as old soup. Fishermen found mullet turning in lazy spirals, silver coins gone dull. Someone poured out buckets the color of brick dust. Someone else said it wasn't blood. Not exactly, though gulls circled as if it were. The night they heard the whales, the air held that after thunder smell, and the lagoon was as still as a held note. Our instruments hum with hospital patience while we sample layers. Surface sweetened by river runoff, middle brackish, bottom sour with the secret rot of things starved of air. The map in my head is a phantom coastline, drawn in vanishing ink. We lower the hydrophones with the care of a prayer, remembering the tape. Hiss, crackle, voices slipping in and out, and the moment when the low tones swelled until the boat became a drum. We wait, suspended between rumor and return, like lungs before the next breath. Malik doesn't look at the water when he speaks. He looks at the ropes, the knots, all the ways a line remembers pressure. When I was a boy, we chased them, he says, and the engine quiets itself as if to listen. He tells us about arcs of breath at dawn, the way a spine breaks the surface like a mountain moving fast, the shame that arrived slower, tidal. He swears the red night was different. No hunt, no screaming gulls, just a color unfurling and then a choir rising from the dark. He says he heard Greek. I want to disagree, to call it something more clinical. But the word hangs there between us, low and true. Tomas adjusts levels, fighting superstition with signal-to-noise ratios. Soraya checks the tide tables, her thumb pausing on the minute the current turns. When the first click pulses through the headphones, it's so faint it could be memory misfiring. We log it anyway, writing down our hope to make it real. The island keeps its own archive. Aya leads us along a path of crushed shells to a shack lined with jars that once held candy and now keep marbles of glass, spent line floats, labels from fertilizer bags softened to velvet by years at sea. Her grandfather's recorder sits on a shelf like a patient bird. She says he pressed it to the hull that night and caught a piece of the hymn, but when the battery coughed, it mangled the pitch into a ghost. She taps the tin casing. Metal speaks metal, and Thomas's eyebrows rise. We are archaeologists of electricity now, scavenging for a fossil made of hiss. In the dim, the air tastes of salt and old sugar. Outside, the surf writes and erases at the same time. Aya asks if the whales sang for help. I tell her animals don't bargain like we do, but alone. I wonder if sound can be a flare, a red throne deeper than sight. Night turns the lagoon into a listening room. The wind drops. The boat creaks as if remembering other loads. Soraya dims the cabin until instruments glow like plankton in a jar. We grid the water, coordinates penciled with the superstition of sailors, and lower the hydrophones again. Somewhere beneath us, A shelf falls away. Old volcano, old throat. Malik stands aft, arms folded, the posture of a man bracing for a verdict. The first sweep returns nothing but engine ghosts and the slow heart of the current. On the second, a tremor. Not a song, but a space opening. I feel it in fillings and bones. Tomas raises a finger weight and rides the dial, coaxing signal from silt. Silence becomes a room we step into together. We hold our breath, and in that shared emptiness, I understand the shape grief takes in water. Not wailing, but a patient hollow. Large enough for a choir we are not yet worthy to hear. At dawn, we harvest water like testimony, careful not to bruise it. Lena moves along the rail with vials and syringes, catching skin, mid, and bottom layers in labeled mouths. The surface tastes faintly sweet. River runoff gilded with fertilizers, and farther down the oxygen meter sags a tired lung. Tomas lowers a CTD rosette, the cable thrumming a low hymn against the hull, while Soraya trims our drift to keep us over the shelf slip. In the headphones, the sea mutters. Shrimp crackle, sand hiss, the planetary scratch track beneath all music. We catalog chlorophyll, turbidity, red tide suspects, with names that sound like saints and poisons in the same breath. Malik watches the horizon as if a verdict might arrive by sail. Every sample jar is a small confession. Trapped light and future charts. When the sun clears the cloud line, the water shows its old bruise again. Faint, diluted, like a memory refusing to heal. We seal the day into coolers, carry it toward truth. The island council meets under a roof of corrugated tin that turns rain into applause. We present numbers, nitrate spikes, oxygen lows, windless weeks that stack like dominoes, and watch them land with the gentle thud of unwelcome news. A fishmonger asks if our charts can feed her sons. An older man says the sea has always changed color, that stories keep people careful. Aya sits near the door, recorder in her lap, eyes a quiet storm. Malik speaks softly about the night he heard the wails and the years he pulled against them. He offers his regret like a coin, small but heavy. Some faces soften, others harden the way salt does on old ropes. They want villains with clear addresses, not currents that braid blame across decades. Lena promises to share every finding. Tomas asks for permission to place passive recorders along the reef. Soraya nods to the wind. Another squall is coming. The vote wavers, then settles. Cautious consent and a warning. Do not wake old ghosts. We seed the reef with ears. Small moored capsules listening to tides and rumor. Tomas programs duty cycles like prayer beads, 6 minutes each hour, enough to catch visiting choirs and spare the batteries. The water is clearer today, but the sunlight reveals a pallor in the coral, a hush in a cathedral once crowded. Lena swims a transect, slate, ticking with absent parrotfish, missing seagrass glitter. Soraya stands sentinel in the wheelhouse reading sky grammar. Weather builds its throat, far offshore. Malik freedives to anchor a recorder to a rock tooth. He surfaces with a gasp and a look that says the shelf drops into a mouth too wide for comfort. We mark the coordinates, a chessboard laid over breathing stone. Every unit pings the mother logger, a family of small hearts sensing. When the last node arms, an unexpected quiet rinses the cove, as if the sea, surprised at our attention, is testing the shape of silence we brought. Back aboard, we exhume the past. Tomas feeds Aya's tin recorder into a jeweler's cradle, coaxing life from oxidized contacts with alcohol and patience. The first playback is a cemetery. Hiss, storm static, a barge's bowel-deep groan. He builds a scaffold of filters, hum notch, declick, spectral subtraction. Each pass revealing absence as much as signal. Lena studies satellite charts, a faded tapestry of currents braiding river plumes into the lagoon at the exact week of heat. Malik lays out old logbooks, dates, winds. the names of boats that chased profit until the sea spoke red. Soraya prints tide tables and marks the minutes we will need to be exactly where the shelf turns to throat. When Tomas finally leans back, the room holds a ghost of tone, sub-bass shaped like a hill against midnight. It is not a song, not yet, but the shape matches the story. A swell rising under everything, a cathedral warming its pipes. Evening brings a wind that smells of copper and cut grass, river breath coming fast. Along the quay, a few fishermen watch us load spare batteries and flotation collars. Respect sits beside suspicion like twins who want speed. An elder presses a charm into Lena's palm, twine and shell, saying it keeps the sea from measuring your heart too closely. Soraya laughs and ties it to the rail anyway. Aya asks if she can help bait the microphones with music. We play back a low sweep, careful not to trespass the whale's grammar. The sound rolls across the cove, a bow across a giant string. Dogs prick their ears, then set. Clouds bruise the west. Malik leans on the rail, eyes in that place past the line where a man's memory sounds louder than surf. When darkness steps onto the deck, we are ready for whatever will or won't arrive. A choir, a rumor, or the long discipline of listening to nothing until it isn't. Currents are handwriting, and today the sea drafts in cursive. Soraya steers along the isobaths as Tomas overlays arrows that curl like smoke, a palimpsest of forces: river push, wind drag, the gyre's slow wrist. Lena reads the ripples as if they're lines crossed out and written again. There's a seam where warm capillaries feed the shelf, and beneath, a heavier tongue of brine slips landward like contraband. Malik marks each eddy with the patience of an old hunter relearning mercy. Our last recorder chirps in the headphones, metronome steady, and then, for a breath, it stutters, as if something enormous has leaned across its shadow. Aya sketches the pattern on the cabin fog, a child's swirl that somehow captures the math. We drift into that seam, engines barely idling, the boat becoming a punctuation mark between conflicting sentences. If the whales carried their song along a river of density, then perhaps we are finally reading the right page. The wind shifts. The margins darken. The storm arrives like a verdict delivered in stages. First, a bruise along the eastern rim, then a low percussion on the hull, then the sky ripping its fabric and letting cold fall through. Soraya feathers the bow into chop. The world edits itself down to spray and helm. Lena straps in, tasting tin in the rain, while Tomas cocoons the mixer in plastic and prayer. Malik rides the stern like a lighthouse that refuses to blink. The sea loses color under the gray, then steals it back in shards of green as waves lift us toward their teeth. Our recorders tug at their leashes below, small hearts in a rough chest. Aya counts between flash and thunder, a child's calculus that measures both distance and courage. Somewhere beneath the violence, there must be corridors of calm, Laminar's thought, where a long body can travel without spending itself. But above, the storm instructs us in humility. Every plan is provisional when the sky remembers its strength. When the storm's back breaks, the ocean exhales a glassy, exhausted breath. We play back the last 4 hours, thunder signing its name, rigging protests, rain's granular tattoo. Then, there, 2 descending moans, clean as whistles. Hearts stagger, eyes widen. It's so temptingly wail. Tomas isolates the band, scrubs the spectrum. The shapes bloom like comets, but the harmonics don't ladder right, and the intervals hold a machine's impatience. He finds it, a freighter's bulbous bow singing through the pressure, a counterfeit hymn stamped by logistics. The relief is thin as paper, the disappointment heavy as lead shot. Malik laughs once, short and bitter, at how eager hope becomes when starved. Lena writes false in the log, but underlines it twice. as if to punish the word. Aya studies the comets and asks if fake songs can still teach us how to listen. No one answers quickly. The sea, having performed its trick, returns to a poker face, unreadable as ever. False signals unspool tempers. Soraya wants clean protocol, fewer gambles. Tomas wants more hydrophones, deeper placement. Lena argues for narrative honesty, the courage to show the void. Malik stands apart, palms on the rail, listening to a sea that isn't in our speakers. Words sharpen. Old loyalties clang like loose shackles. Aya blinks back heat and says the elders don't fear silence, they fear forgetting. The boat quiets. We recalibrate the mission. Map the quiet as faithfully as sound. Trace absence like coastline. Lena proposes a midnight drift with engines killed, letting current choose our course. Soraya hates surrendering helm to chance but marks the window when tide slips seaward. Tomas writes a new capture script, throttling down gain to invite the low ghosts. Malik volunteers the Graveyard Cove, where nets once stacked and men told lies about mercy, as our station. Agreement arrives like a truce after a long siege. Imperfect, necessary, signed in tired eyes. Night folds around us without moon or witness. We kill the engine. The world resets to wet wood groans and our own animal breathing. The boat drifts, loose in the current, like a leaf relinquished by a story. Tomas meters glow at monk brightness. Lena writes in the dark, the scratch of graphite, a metronome of faith. Soraya threads bearings by feel, committing invisible stars to memory. Malik hums an old work song under his breath, a contrition shaped into melody. The headphones offer a room the size of the reef, black and hollow. Inside it, small lives crackle. Shrimp, urchin, sand, like a campfire whispering to itself. Minutes lengthen. Aya falls asleep upright, tin recorder against her chest, as if guarding a shard of myth. Then, from a place that feels not ahead but below time, something moves the water's sentence. Not a note, not yet. A pressure curve. A suggestion of breath large enough to bend our silence. Every face lifts. We do not speak. At the museum that is not a museum, just a shed with harpoons laid like sleeping dogs, we unroll a century in iron and salt. The shafts are nicked, where rope chewed them. The heads wear rust the color of dried kelp. Malik traces a bevel with his thumb as if reading braille from a life he left. Lena films without indictment, her lens patient, while Soraya counts the years the island sold thunder to the sea. Outside, a river, the shade of tea, slips past cane fields, and a factory whose pipes exhale breathless steam. In satellite time, the plume finds the lagoon as surely as an arrow finds a wound. Tomas overlays bloom maps upon catch logs, and the alignments ache with clarity. Warm weeks, nitrogen feasts, oxygen falling like dusk. Aya asks which sins weigh more, old iron or bright fertilizer, and we have no scales that fit. History is a tide that backfills every footprint. The whales, if they returned, would hear all of it resounding in the bones of the bay. We follow the river upstream until its banks trade mangrove for cane, the fields trimmed square as ledger pages. A sluice gate coughs a tired brown, and the air carries a sweetness that turns metallic on the tongue. Tomas dips a probe. Numbers climb as neatly as guilt, nitrates, phosphates, a clockwork of unintended harvest. Lena films the factory from the road, trucks groaning with promise, the kind that pays now and invoices later in algae and fishless nights. A manager steps out, polite as rain, speaks of compliance and livelihoods, of permits framed on walls, of how the sea is large enough to forgive. Malik listens with his jaw tight, knowing too well the arithmetic of legal harm. Soraya asks for access. We get a tour that shows pipes and none of the leak between intention and effect. Aya collects a mason jar of river skin, holds it to the light, Suspended flecks sparkle like distant cities. It looks beautiful, which is part of the problem. Night lectures in diagrams of chlorophyll and heat. Tomas turns the cabin into a planetarium of data. False color gyres pulsing. Filaments of bloom unfurling like ink in warm milk. He narrates the choreography. Stratification locks the deep, airless calm caps the lid. Nutrients pour from river veins. And then the tiny architects rise. A green confetti that dazzles the eye while stealing breath from below. Lena overlays dates of fish kills, community notes about stinging air and metallic rain. Soraya marks windless spells, those weeks when sails loll and tempers blanch. Malik stares at the spectral ridge we named the Hymns Hill. He asks what song phytoplankton sing when they feast too long. Aya sketches a whale shaped from contour lines, as if the ocean is writing an animal from map. In this room we can rewind the bloom like weather, but outside the sea conducts its own experiment, quiet and vast. We decide to place a deep recorder in the throat, where oxygen goes thin. At the graveyard cove, Malik asks for the camera to be off. We oblige. The ocean holds the only witness it needs. He speaks to the dark water, and, by extension to us, about a calf that surfaced beside its mother, about the day he threw a dart and heard a sound like a house, settling at winter, about money that bought roofs, and shame that bought. Leak-proofed nothing. He says the red night felt like an answer the sea gave in a language he had taught it to fear. Lena listens with her hands folded, a priest without absolution. Soraya looks away, giving the man a privacy no screen can offer. Tomas, who trusts waveforms more than words, understands that some frequencies travel best through confession. Aya reaches for Malik's big hand with her small one, anchoring him to the now. When we switch the recorder back on, the cove seems changed. Emptier? Yes, but also clearer, as if a stone has been moved from the mouth of a spring. We rig for the deep set as if fitting an argument with ballast. The recorder descends in stages, lights blinking farewell until the sea edits them out. Soraya times the drop to slack tide. The line pays smooth, a thread lowering into a throat that once coughed up red. Lena calls depths like prayer beads. 10, 20, 40. While Tomas reads the oxygen profile taper to a thin script, Malik tends the winch with reverence, each click a penitent step. Aya stands on tiptoe to mark the coordinates, tongue pressed to lip in concentration. When the package reaches the layer where day becomes rumor, we arm it and let go. The line shivers. The boat lists a degree toward absence, then writes. On deck, we are quiet in the way people become after funerals and vows. The sea resumes her blank face, but we have installed a memory where breath ends. If the whales return, their voices will pass this way. If they don't, the silence will be accurately kept. The plan is a knife edge. Slip into the pier labyrinth after midnight, thread the pilings where the current knots, and lay a second deep ear beneath the old cannery. Soraya hates the geometry. Crossbeams at shin height, rebar whiskers, the wake reflecting confusion back at the hull. But the tide window is perfect. A brief unbuttoning before the river inhales. Tomas rehearses the sequence on his lips like a catechism. Arm, sink, test pulse, release. Lena checks her dive light twice, then a third time, as if illumination can be stockpiled against luck. Malik splices a spare line, breathing even, hands remembering sea lessons older than law. Aya, barred from deck for the drop, sets her recorder beside the wheel like a votive. The pier creaks the way old bones gossip. Somewhere a chain kisses a mooring ring, metal to metal like a warning. The water under there has the color of a decision. We dim everything that glows. The boat becomes a rumor you could choose not to believe. We ghost the pylon's engine at heartbeat idle. The cannery exudes a faint sugar rot that hides a tang of metal. The pilings are tattooed with tide lines, a ledger of seasons and careless spills. Lena slips into the water with the grace of a decision finally made. Her light knifes a section of green, revealing ropes furred with life and bottles slumped into silt like sleeping seals. Tomas feeds the recorder down, counting soft as prayer. Malik guides the tether around a beam where barnacles shine like blunt stars. Soraya reads the swell's punctuation and nods us through the comma between sets. The pier's crosswork tightens until the sky becomes a rumor above grid. In the headphones, a low space, clean as a chapel. Then the current turns, just a degree, just enough, and the boat shoulders a beam. The hull utters a syllable of pain. Lena's tether snaps from Malik's palm, a fish darting for shadow. We all grab air before we grab anything else. The snag is small and therefore dangerous. Lena's light finds it, a rusted hoop of rebar jutting from a pylon like an afterthought. Her tether loops it perfectly, a trick knot no one meant to tie. Soraya feathers reverse, whispering to the prop. The boat sulks sideways. Tomas kills the deck lights and listens, trying to locate stress by sound. The violins squeak of rope fibers nearing their ugly note. Malik slides into the water with a knife, and a look that says he's done this too many times in other contexts. He taps the hoop. Flakes lift like brown snow. Lena holds the cable high, body a drawn bow. The recorder dangles below, a heart we can't afford to drop. The tide's exhale returns, stronger, impatient. For a moment, all forces balance. Rust, rope, current, breath. Aya, disobeying, creeps to the rail and whispers Lena's name as if names could thicken water. The hoop groans, or maybe that's the boat. Either way, something gives. The line whips free with a vindictive flick that smacks Lena's shoulder, stuns the arm, and sends her light cartwheeling into shadow. In the sudden dark, the pier becomes pure idea. Angles, distances, consequences. While the current decides to hurry. Lena's body kisses a pylon. Bubbles feather from her regulator like startled birds. Malik swims across her palm to sternum, halts her spin. His knife finds rope again, carving a clean end. Above, Soraya leans the boat off the beam with a pulse of throttle that takes a decade of practice and one breath of nerve. Tomas, monotone calm, calls depth and bearing like a lighthouse speaking. Aya's voice threads it all. Here, here, not command, not panic, a needle drawing us through. The light blooms back as Lena retrieves it, and in that moment the headphones fill with a sound too large for luck. A rising pressure curve that almost becomes tone, the shape of something enormous turning in its sleep. Everyone stills. Even the current listens. We arm the unit with fingers that remember how nearly we became an anecdote. Malik snubs the new line short of the rebar's bite. Lena tests the clamp twice, then rests her forehead to the pylon in a private truce. Soraya takes us clear, inches at a time until the pier's grid softens into a simple night, and the cannery's windows are a row of tired eyes. Tomas runs the handshake, ping, reply, time code. The recorder's tiny life joins our scattered constellation. In the cans, the pressure swell returns, closer now, rounder. Braiding with shrimp static into a chord you feel more than hear. Aya's small hand finds Lena's. They listen like people listen to a secret they suspect is meant for them and not at all. Then the shape passes, leaving a hollow that is unmistakably shaped by presence. We say nothing. Superstition choosing silence over celebration. The sea around the boat relaxes by half a breath. It is not the vanished hymn. It is a door opening somewhere below. Aya leads us to a pocket of coast the charts call nothing, and the island knows by a name that means place where breath returns at low tide. The basalt opens into bowls and fluted runnels when swell threads them. The rock sings in vowel tones, a pipe organ carved by centuries of patient water. Aya lifts a flat stone, reveals a child's hoard. Shells, a rusted key, the paper band from an old cassette, and chalk marks that are not play but pattern. She has been copying what she hears here. a sequence of long and short gullies counted on her fingers, memorized the way a lullaby survives a household. Tomas crouches, listening with his hands pressed to wet stone, hearing not wails but a grammar the ocean uses to arrange their voices. The wind lays a steady hand on the grass. Wave after wave prints the same syllables until we can almost read them. If the Red Knight left a message, it may have been cached in rock, waiting for the right small keeper. Back aboard, Aya's chalk arithmetic becomes Thomas's spectral calculus. He maps the gully intervals to time, the swell period to carrier, the pipe notes to a lattice beneath hearing. The old tin recorder's ghost tone sits there too, a hill of sub-bass under midnight, its crest matching the rock's vowel song with unnerving sympathy. He widens the window to infrasonic, drops the gain until the room feels like it has grown larger. There, faint ridges, regular as ribs, hidden beneath shrimp crackle like handwriting under a palimpsest. Lena leans in, the script reflected in her eyes. Malik rubs his jaw, hearing a cadence he can't name but trusts. Soraya marks the tide that will tune the organ best. Aya, whose fingers found the pattern first, taps the desk lightly along with the invisible beat. Tomas smiles without looking up. It's not a melody, he says. It's scaffolding, a road. He rotates the map and a corridor appears, pointing toward the throat we armed last night. We anchor in the corridor at dusk, kill the engine, and let the shore's organs set our metronome. The reef crackles, stars unbutton one by one, and the sea arranges itself into a long-held breath. Then the pressure bends, a presence arriving not from distance but from depth, like weather rising through the floor. The first call is wrong if you're waiting for beauty. It limps, its harmonics frayed, as if scored on parchment left in rain. A second answers from the shelf, then a third, close enough to shape the darkness. Lena grips the rail, tears she does not consent to starting their own small tide. Malik stands taller without moving, a man remembering the proper size of awe. Tomas rides the levels like a surfer who finally sees the set he has trained for. Aya whispers numbers, counting the scaffolding hammered into place beneath each broken note. The pod has returned, but their song is not the vanished hymn. It is a repair, stitched, scarred, undeniable. The calls crest and falter like a choir relearning breath after smoke. Some phrases land clean, a pillar of tone that vibrates the ribs. Others collapse into hoarse exhalations that feel like apologies. We make the quiet decision not to answer with playback. Every temptation to speak their grammar is a risk of stepping on a prayer. Soraya keeps us feathered in the seam where the shore organ hum threads the sub-bass road. Tomas finds a subharmonic spine, 32 seconds between keystones on which the fractured motifs hang like lanterns. Lena films faces instead of darkness, the way awe redraws a person without asking. Malik, head bowed, mouths something that might be gratitude or grief. Aya rests her palm on the deck, feeling the boat become drum again. The sea writes a sentence we are finally literate enough to read, even if we cannot translate it. When the longest call arrives, deep, deliberate, and lower than anything on the old tape, we understand. The key has changed. Near midnight, the pod draws so close the water. By the beam rises and settles with each invisible flank. We taste oil and iron and something green. The boat ticks as if cooling from a great effort. The repaired song gathers courage, trades limping motifs for a measured procession that rings the bay like a slow bell. In the headphones, our deep recorder relays from the throat. Sub-bass keystones lining up with the shore organ's breath, a bridge across layers that once spelled red. Lena presses the tin recorder to the hull, an homage to a grandfather, to a night when batteries failed and a myth began. Tomas stamps time code. Malik names nothing, only watches. Aya counts to 32 and back again, smiling through tears at the symmetry. When the call swings seaward, the boat rocks once, as if bowed to. We do not chase. Dawn will be the deciding page, and the corridor points away from us like an invitation. We secure the gear and keep our silence warm. Dawn peels the night from the sea like gauze from a healing wound. The corridor is a pale seam pointing east, the shore organ quieting to breath between words. Soraya trims us to a glide. The engine idles only to remind us it's there. Thomas checks the deep logger. Clean sink, batteries healthy. The sub-bass spine still beating at 32 seconds like a lighthouse under the floor. Lena frames the horizon where the water once went red and now wears a cautious silver, the color of amnesty that hasn't decided to last. Malik folds a coil with the tenderness of apology, set down and finally heard. Aya stands in the bow, the recorder like a talisman at her chest, counting under her breath, stitching numbers to light. We have recordings enough to prove a return, but proof is an instrument with no soul if it's the only song. The whales are somewhere ahead, writing the last paragraph with their bodies. We ease forward, not hunters, not heroes, just witnesses with open palms. They surface like punctuation, first a period, then a comma, then a long dash that takes our breath with it. No breaches, no spectacle. Just a procession of backs inscribing meaning. The repaired song murmurs through wood and bone. Measured, grave, complete enough to travel. Lena keeps her lens low, refusing to take more than the water offers. Soraya holds us parallel. Distance kept like respect in a sacred room. Malik rests his palms flat on the rail, eyes shining with a light that doesn't come from the sky. Tomas rides the levels only to ride them less, learning to let a waveform be a body and not a graph. Aya counts, then stops counting. Some things must be held without numbers. The red night is here, but as an echo reversed, color drained, sound restored. For a moment, the bay is a mouth shaping a word we finally pronounce correctly by staying quiet. The pod arcs toward the throat, exactly where the corridor writes its invitation. At the shelf's lip, the ocean opens into cathedral again. The deep recorder is below, a patient ear waiting in the aisle. The whales pivot there, arranging themselves in geometry we can feel but not chart. Two low, one high, one shadowing like a guard, the last trailing with the fatigue of old grief. The long note arrives, the changed key, declaring itself without apology. Deeper than the myth, steadier than the tape's ghost hill, carrying the scaffolding we learned on the rocks, but dressed now in flesh. Tomas time stamps without blinking. Lena's hands shake, and she lets them. Malik bows as if before an altar. Soraya touches the charm tied to the rail. Aya lays the tin recorder against the hull, completing a circle that began in inn, a shack of sugar jars and stories. The call pours through metal and marrow until even the gulls fall silent. Beneath us, the logger catches it whole. In the headphones, the bay's bones ring. This is not the song that vanished. It is the one that survived. We could follow them. We could turn the bow east and drag the corridor like a net and sell a film threaded with pursuit. Instead, Soraya eases us to neutral. The pod chooses the horizon without the burden of our wanting. Tomas mirrors the decision in software. He arms the moored array for weeks, not hours, trusting the sea to speak when it will. Lena writes a script that admits how much we missed, how much we guessed. Malik walks to the stern and drops his old harpooner's token, a brass ring into the water. It spins, flashes, and is gone. A bright syllable swallowed by grammar vast enough to forgive. Aya asks if the whales will sing this again. Lena says no with gentleness, then yes with hope. Both are true. What we keep is not a rarity to be caged, but a practice of listening to a place until it yields its living terms. The tide turns outward, as tides do. The red is gone. The measure remains. Back on the island, the council hall smells of rain and cut rope. We play the recording not loudly, but as one plays a heart to a doctor. Steady, fragile, definitive. The room leans forward. Fishmongers, cane cutters, children with salt still drying in their hair. The long note unfurls. Some close eyes, some stare at the floorboards, as if sound could etch grain. Lena keeps the numbers simple. Tides, heat, nutrients, choices. Tomas sketches the scaffolding in chalk. Aya connects the strokes, and the board becomes shoreline and song at once. Soraya reads a plan. Buffers along the river, storm ponds, a pause on dredging the throat. Practical verbs that give the whales air they'll never see. Malik speaks last, not as penance but as promise, offering boats and hands to the work of undoing. We step outside into light as clear as new glass. The sea is ordinary blue. Somewhere below its skin, a recorder rests, listening. Keeping the measure we learned when the water turned red and the whales sang us back to ourselves.